since before the overthrow of Ben Ali. Yeah. And from the Tunisian capital, Monica Marks, Middle East Studies researcher at St. Antony's College in Oxford. Last Saturday, the new prime minister in Tunisia was announced. This after protracted negotiations launched nearly 2 months ago under the auspices of the main trade union confederation.
God made today into a day of victory for democracy in Tunisia, a victory of dialogue over confrontation, a victory of dialogue over violence.
This next government, the next Prime Minister, does not represent us. We did not contribute to his being elected, and he is not a national consensus.
It's hard to make everyone agree, but the most important thing is that the national dialogue will continue. Political parties will be part of it also. That's the most important thing.
All right, you heard varying points of view there, Moncef, Sheikh, ROUHOUdeputy. It looks like the vote won't be unanimous when the Constituent Assembly ratifies that new government, gives it a vote of no confidence. I'm a little alarmed hearing what you said in part one of our discussion about how there's a lot of power vacuums in the judiciary, most notably when it comes to keeping things on the rail in the lead up to those elections. When you see how tenuous it is and how the opinions vary, do you feel as though there really has been a breakthrough over the weekend?
Absolutely. Francois, when we used to meet in Paris, when you kindly invited me to the same excellent programs you have, I used to be only a professor at HEC Paris. Now I am also a member of parliament, as you have mentioned. But one more thing, I am a member of the opposition. I'm not a member of the majority in power. So we are a free country now. We are discussing our issues and we are voting. And only proper groups can make the right decisions. So we cannot, as parliamentarians or as government or as opposition, make the elections. The elections have to be the produce of the independent instance for the elections. 9 people that are selected after a due process. This process is long because, as you have mentioned, the administrative tribunal wanted things to go his way. So we have to abide by that. So the delays in the elections are not due to any political hassle. They're due to this administrative thing, and we have to go through it. Now, coming to the breakthrough of Saturday, it is a very big breakthrough. Winston Churchill used to say about America that America usually takes the best decision only after trying all the other possibilities. Now, Tunisia has been doing tâtonnement, but as the lady said
trial and error,
in Paris, trial and error, the word tâtonnement was used by my professor Debreu in Berkeley, and trial and error is what Tunisians are trying to put in place. And here we are avoiding the situation of Tripoli, the situation of Benghazi, even the situation of Egypt, where people did not understand that winning the votes one time is not sufficient. So we convinced the parties that won the elections that they should go away until new elections take place. And they agreed to do so. Where could that happen? Last Saturday, we voted on the law against those who perpetrated things against the people during the Ben Ali era. And we were cutting out from the parliament. I was looking at another majority party and telling them, hey, now you are no longer in power. And they told me, yes, now we are in the opposition like you. I mean, where can that happen without people shooting each other? And this is why I say Tunisia has decided to step out of politics, to let politicians prepare the next stage, while the technocrats, while specialists, we met today with the new prime minister-to-be, parties, and we discussed his program with him. He has to have the terms of reference for his roadmap. The roadmap is being set by him, the parties, and the labor unions. And we are working very hard on getting to Tunisians what they want. So it's not true that Tunisians are completely disconnected of what's happening. Tunisians are very happy today that the solution has been found. We criticize the achievements of government. The majority did not do very well in security field, as your guest has said. They didn't do well in economics. They didn't do well in many other things, but they accepted to step out without any military coup. And this is, I think, a big victory for Tunisia.
All right, but French newspaper Le Monde reporting that it took a hard sell from France and the European Union under the headline, "A New Prime Minister Named Under Western Pressure." The reporter chronicled how the EU's aid seemed conditional on the respect of a reform roadmap. Saida OUNISSI, let me ask you the question. Was it EU pressure in the end that brought about this deal on Saturday?
I definitely don't think so, with all my respect to Le Monde journalist who has written this article. When you look at what's happening in the ground, when there is people, especially researchers, who are working on Tunisia since 2 or 3 years now, yes, there is the EU interest in Tunisia. There is a call from EU, from the Council of Europe, not only the European Union, for the whole transition to go ahead. But I'm really doubting that France or Germany would, because of one picture on Facebook.
The article chronicles how the German ambassador, there's a communique by the French foreign ministry, how they all helped with they added layers of pressure on this.
What I look to is more the pressure from the street, which happened since the assassination of Brahmi, the pressure from all the political parties engaged in the national dialogue, the pressure of, and this is quite unique in the world, to see a major trade union being at the head of the national dialogue, asking political parties to sit together and to find a solution. So there is always, very important public definitely Tunisian and local stakeholders putting the pressure for this solution to come. So very well if Europe has asked for something, but I definitely think that it's a Tunisian decision. And let me just, all what our guests today have said is quite true. There is big challenges for Tunisia, and especially in terms of justice and transitional justice. And it was this weekend quite a happiness, and people were congratulating themselves for the new law of transitional justice, which has been just adopted this weekend, late evening on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So there is quite, these challenges in terms of transition, in terms of as well judging the people of the old regime, to clearly also condemn corruption, to also take this question of torture in Tunisia, which is still relevant, and in terms of freedom of expression, etc. So these are the main matters civil society in Tunisia, young people in Tunisia are dealing with, are putting pressure with, and I think that it's more that which is pushing the
it's more domestic
leaders.
Pressure than anything
Definitely.
coming from donors.
On the ground it's quite...
there's pressure, but we didn't read the fruits. Sorry to interrupt.
You can feel it. On the ground, there is a lot of people who are, definitely there is this disillusion, but people do participate.
All right, disillusion like we saw with this tweet, 3 years since the beginning of the Arab Revolution, I see no changes. Let's talk about that transitional justice process that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Monica Marks, in the piece that you wrote for Foreign Policy, you mentioned how important it was, and you denounce a bit ad hoc attempts at transitional justice. Can you explain what you meant?
That's right. It's very important that there's a transitional justice process that involves a lot of participation and inclusivity, and that looks politically neutral. There's a danger that if you politicize the transitional justice process, then you're not going to have something that's credible. So it's very important, considering the thousands of people who were persecuted under the old regime and the history that a lot of Tunisians simply aren't aware of. Many Tunisians don't really understand what happened to their neighbors. they were forced to kind of look in the funhouse mirrors of Ben Ali's regime, and he constantly told them that you are unified, you are secular, you are liberal, you are peaceful, and now the lid came off the pot, and a lot of people are beginning to look at themselves for the first time. So it's very important, not only for the victims of the old regime, but for Tunisia's history moving forward and Tunisians' own understanding of themselves as a nation to have a credible process. So recently there was a book called The Black Book, that was published by the presidency, by Moncef and his office, that kind of denounced and chronicled journalists who received money from the old regime to propagandize on its behalf. And this, could be seen as a politicized attempt at transitional justice. Also, Ennahda has appointed a lot of its local people in positions for which they're not entirely qualified, and that could be seen as ad hoc as well. So it's very important. And just to get back to what Jalila said a little bit earlier about security, the first elections were held just a few months after the revolution, just about 9 months afterwards. And that was a time in which the security in Tunisia was at its very worst for the average Tunisian citizen. You didn't necessarily have these high-profile political assassinations, but it was awful. And the elections went quite well. There was almost a complete decentralization of the security apparatus at that time. So this is a huge challenge, along with the judiciary.
I think the security was better at that time.
Challenge.
I think the security, I participated as a watchdog to those elections, and I saw the security at that time. It was better than now, because at that time we didn't have any attacks, any terrorist attacks. We don't hear of the army killed and slaughtered and lynched. I mean, we didn't see horrible things at that time. We didn't have political assassination, but this time I think it's worse.
At that time, I think a lot of average Tunisians would have complained a lot more about things like looting, about attacks on police stations. A lot of police stations in the country and courthouses
at that time
were simply destroyed
the
at that time.
technocrats leading the country, and those technocrats and the EZ at that time ensured fair and let's say secure elections. And
I think there have been security challenges the whole way through. It's a huge problem. I totally agree with you about that. But
it's definitely
one
a challenge.
Of many, and it's a problem that they were able to overcome in the first elections as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think now the situation is worse, and especially with the story of the army slaughtered and killed, and the terrorism that is spreading all over the country. I think we cannot organize fair elections if we don't clean the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the judicial institutions for a transitional justice, in order to establish an enduring peace. We need to have those. We need to build trust, and trust
cannot. Really much of a choice. The country has to have a constitution that's credible, and next elections that are credible for a new government to really have the sovereignty and authority to start reforming these critical institutions, like economic corruption, judiciary security. I don't really think Tunisia has much of a choice. It has to have the election and finish the constitutions first to really undertake a comprehensive, transparent, and accountable reform.
Yeah, but we cannot have all that without the major pillar. The most important pillar in Tunisia now is building the trust, and trust for Tunisians. Tunisians cannot have trust in the system in general now, and confidence, unless they see a clear roadmap, and unless the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the institutions are cleared from corruption, and we have like a readable roadmap, simple, clear, straight to the point, terms of reference clear for everybody, so that we know what we're moving ahead to. That's we're not asking for the answer now, but we need to see things clear, because we're 3 years of uncertainty. I mean, I was here before the toppling of Ben Ali, and I was uncertain, but I was happy. But now at this moment, I'm speaking. I'm uncertain, but I'm a bit sad because I'm not seeing the way out. Yes, sure.
Your point about a roadmap gets to the point of communication. The government has to do a better job of public outreach, communicating transparently, because what's happened with the national dialogue, just like what happened with a lot of the constitutional drafting debates, kind of happened behind closed doors. A lot of people didn't understand what was going on. So the government has to undertake a very transparent public outreach campaign, has to get better with communication for people to really feel like stakeholders.
All right, I just want to bring up a bit of context here on something. Both you and Moncef Rouhou have mentioned the term terrorists. Moncef Rouhou, who are the terrorists, as you call them?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to say a word here, because I wanted to remind ourselves that Tunisia is a free country now. So it is so free that people who are in support of the dictatorship of Ben Ali may express their opinions and may say so not only in Paris, but in Tunis. Of course, they are a minority. We know that the only way for Tunisia to progress, to be an emerging country, is to build democracy, to have alternance, and to go there. So there are some people who came from an overflow of what has been happening in Libya, arms and extremists, terrorists that are coming through Libya, Tunisians that have been fighting either in Libya or in Mali, after the war in Mali, through Libyan border. And some of them went to fight in Syria, and they are trying to get back through Libya again. So the borders were not so secure then. And I would like to reassure your guest in Paris that the Tunisian military, that the Tunisian police, that the Tunisian National Guards are doing a beautiful job. I had meetings recently with the top members of the military and the security in Tunis, and they are stepping up this work to protect Tunisians from outside dangers. Now I will remind ourselves that those people are principally Tunisian citizens. So we have to deal with them as Baader Meinhof was treated in Germany when leftists started to kill people, or like in Italy when the Brigate Rosse, the Red Brigades started to kill people, the Red Brigades. So here we have exactly the same events. Should we drop Italian democracy or German democracy because of some terrorists that started to be leftists went into killing? No. So these terrorists are people who are heading towards using force in order to implement their ideas. They have been kept out. The military is doing their job. I invite the lady to come on my beach in Hammamet and see that when I walk yes, please. On the white sandy beach, you see the Belgian, the American, the British tourists walking safely. When you are in the Fifth Avenue in New York, you're not affected by the killings that might take place in the Bronx. And this is what has been happening. All Tunisia is not under fire. Tunisia is building a democracy. I am in the opposition. I want the present government to be removed. It has gone. And now we have to prepare for the elections, which we are doing. We do not need conditions by Europe. The title of Le Monde is derogatory because it reminds us of the smell of colonialism again. We are doing what is necessary for our country without needing conditions. We wanted that government because of Tunisian pressure, not because of foreign pressure. But I must say that after his nomination, I got calls from the IMF, from the World Bank, saying this is a good move. Investors are happy. That's stability, and we are welcoming it.
Saida, OUNISSI.
Yes, I'd like to say something about the fact that you can definitely not compare the situation of a country in terms of security in a dictatorship. And I understand, and as a Tunisian myself, I've faced that a lot when coming back to Tunis, feeling that people are actually afraid. Because when you're living in a dictatorial regime, everything is watched. The police is everywhere. The government is basically watching you. So you feel a kind of safe. And I mean, it's normal when all these measures are removed, people started to feel unsafe, to feel that they are constantly threatened. And this terrorist attack, which happened this summer, confirmed this feeling. So I think people has also to be...
All right, so there is this spillover effect from Libya. But let me ask you something, and just to remind our viewers, one of the low points, you might say, over the past 2 years, probably along with the assassination of those opposition leaders we mentioned earlier, was the September 2012 attack on the U.S. Embassy in Tunis. It left 4 dead, an attack blame on radical Islamists allied with a leader called Abu Iyad. Now, Abu Iyad,
Is researched.
they're searching
didn't
for him.
find him till now.
There was a period where he was in Tunis,
Yeah.
and authorities went to arrest him, but his supporters exfiltrated him.
And
He
it
got
happened-
away.
I think
Exactly.
what happened in that situation clearly represents the emergency of having effective justice, an effective corp of inquiring, of prosecuting, of having fair trials. Because what happened at that time is we actually in Tunisia had, it was a kind of laissez-faire. And in the same time, after that, we decided to jail around 200 Salafis, or people assumed as being Salafis. And some of them died in prison because they were basically in hunger strike, and they didn't have fair trials, and they died of that. So this is
But
clearly,
have the moderate Islamists of Ennahda been outflanked often by more radical elements throughout the past 3 years?
Well, I'm not sure the question must be posed in that thing, because Ennahda has been clear toward terrorism. They have condemned every time, and from every strat. So if you go to the leaders of Ennahda, they had a clear speech on that. If you go as well to interview the militant at the base, they also have. And I must say that these guys are the first victims of these terrorist attacks, because every time they are blamed for it. So it's definitely not on their favor. And I think that this Islamist party, which is Ennahda, had a clear position on that.
I don't think so. It's just a few months ago that Ennahda said that Ansar al-Sharia are a terrorist group.
And it has been decided
but since the beginning we don't understand their position from them,
because we were out from a very difficult situation called the dictatorship, where everyone was designed as being non-legitimate to speak.
Yes,
you know? So
but
it
they're
was
not
not
speaking.
that
They
easy.
are acting violently. They are not speaking. It's violence.
It was not easy to put people on a terrorist list of organizations which are.
But their deeds were terrorist. Burning an embassy is terrorist.
It has been done by the Ministry of Justice, and this is the job of the state, not the job of Ennahda.
There was no clear position from Ennahda at that time.
It's not the job of a political party.
They did not take any action, and Ben Abu Iyad was in front of them, and they didn't capture him.
All right, let me ask Monica Marks before we go on this. Monica, we saw what's happened in Egypt with the army taking over again. How have things in Tunisia in that respect changed since those events in Egypt?
The events in Egypt this summer had a huge regional spillover. There had been pre-existing calls from October 24th, 2011, 1 day after the Constituent Assembly had promised to finalize the Constitution. There had been calls from some in the opposition to dissolve the Constituent Assembly or to say that it wasn't legitimate from even that point. So there was this desire for the opposition to seize a window of opportunity. And this summer in Egypt, when they looked across and saw what happened with the army deposing Morsi with a lot of popular applause, they thought, well, maybe it's possible, something like that is possible here in Tunisia. Now, Tunisia doesn't have an army, so something like that would have had to be a soft coup. But there were figures who stepped in quite immediately, like HEBHLI, leader of Nidat Tunis, and called for the complete dissolution of Tunisia's core transitional body, which is the Constituent Assembly. So the past few months since then have really been an attempt for the sitting government to grapple with the opposition, not the entire opposition, but mostly Nidat Tunis and HEBHLI's desire to dissolve the Constituent Assembly. So they're kind of meeting in the middle and saying, well, we'll hold the Constituent Assembly together, but we'll give way to a fully technocratic government. And this was months after, in March, following the HEBHLI assassination, HEBHLI, who was then Prime Minister, very prominent figure in not the party, decided to diffuse tensions by creating a partially technocratic government. So this new Prime Minister, who was just announced on Saturday, Mehdi Jomra, he was Minister of Industry that came into that technocratic government in March.
All right, so tensions being diffused with that. We're going to have to leave it there. Of course, we wish Moncef Sheikh Rouhou the best of luck in ratifying that new constitution. Let's hope the sooner the better for everyone. Saida, OUNISSI, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Jalila, HEBHLI, PEUGNET, and Monica Marks. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.